Welcome to Garden Chatter, where we connect gardeners, bloggers, and experts so we can all grow and learn together. Tonight we have a special guest, Cathy Nesbitt, and she is going to share with us about worm composting, among other things. So, hello, how are you doing, Adam Cortel?
Hello, Bran. So if anyone wants to join this conversation live, they can leave a question or comment, which makes it fun, because then Cathy can respond to your questions, or you can just give a little shout out. Maybe you just want to tell where you are and that you've joined us. So if you'd like to do that, you can go ahead and click on the screen, and then it should open up, and you'll see a little grid at the top. It's a little 3x3 grid. Click that, and there'll be a Q&A thing that you can click. We did find that you can't do that on a mobile, so you'll need to be on your desktop. So let's see. Cathy, why don't you tell a little bit about where you're located and what you're up to, and then we'll get into worms. So welcome to our show, Cathy.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Brent. I'm so excited to be here at the Garden Chatter Google Hangout. I practiced that because I was like, that's a mouthful. Not like Cathy's calling composters.
Right.
So I'm located just north of Toronto in Canada, and we have similar temperature, I believe, to where you are, Bran. We had beautiful, steamy, hot summer, like July or August weather on the weekend, and then today was really quite chilly. But I moved out of Toronto. I actually grew up in Toronto, and I moved out of Toronto in '93 and have never looked back. I love where I live. I have an amazing garden, and we're the carrot and onion capital of Canada, actually, in Bradford.
Oh, wow.
So how long ago did you get interested in worms?
So in '93, I moved out of Toronto, moved up to Bradford, and started gardening and composting. And I, as an avid gardener, I couldn't wait to collect more stuff. Of course, if you compost, the more you put in, the more you get out, the better your garden grows naturally. So I would take, collect my coworkers. I worked in an office, collected my coworkers' lunchroom scraps to bring home to a bit of my composter. Although it had to do with the environment, it was really more selfish than the environment. It was because I wanted more compost for my garden. And then I got my psych degree in 2000 and started a job at a group home working with challenged adults. And I loved it, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is so great. And they had a farm and a vocational program, and the clients would go to the farm to work, but they didn't compost. And so when I asked them about composting, they said, we don't need the fertilizer because we have cows. And I thought, oh my gosh, if you produce all these food scraps, you pay a lot to get rid of it. And it's not garbage, it's a resource. So we started talking about vermicomposting there, and yeah, it kind of just got my interest. I was actually afraid of worms before starting my business. Not right before. But I realized that it's so valuable. I started to research the red wigglers and discovered the magic, that they can convert half their weight per day, live up to 10 years, have 5 hearts each. They're magic creatures. I love them.
Wow. So all worms can live up to 10 years?
Well, not in the wild, really. They don't. They're food for a lot of critters.
Yeah.
So even red wigglers, I think we're really expanding their life extending their life by doing worm composting, by keeping them in a container.
Yeah, I had no idea they could live that long. That's interesting. Mm-hmm. So you are you mostly focused on in the beginning an echo? Anyway, are you mostly getting worms set up in like city dwellers' homes, or what's?
Yes, that really is my focus. So as I mentioned, I'm close to Toronto, largest city in Canada. We just turned over 6 million in the Greater Toronto Area, and in 2002 the landfill for Toronto closed. So when the landfill for the largest city in a country closes, it's a problem, a big problem. And although we're the second largest country in the world, we couldn't find a place to put our garbage. And actually, in 2002, sorry, United States, we started shipping garbage to Michigan from Toronto area. Shame on us as Canadians for shipping our garbage out of the country.
Right?
You know, yeah, almost 200,
Wow.
almost 200 garbage trucks at the beginning of the program in 2002. 200 garbage trucks every day leaving the Toronto area. Terrible. For a lot of money. I mean, so that was my main focus. 6 million people in the Greater Toronto Area, half live in condos, without space to do outdoor composting or access to an organic collection program. So that was my big focus, but I do believe worms are going to play an ever-increasing role in waste management, soil production, and therefore food security, all in one little worm.
Do you have like a particular goal you have set out for yourself, like how many people you're going to reach, or how many households are going to have worm bins in them?
Yeah, so my personal mission is worms in every living space. So thank you for this opportunity to raise awareness. Really, worms in every house or apartment, every school, every classroom, every business. So we don't have to truck around the garbage, and I'll say garbage in air quotes because we don't, nature doesn't create any garbage. We're the garbage makers. We need to look after our own resources on site rather than shipping it around. It doesn't make sense.
You know what percentage of like Toronto's garbage stream is compost or kitchen scraps that could be composted by worms? Is there a pretty big chunk of it? Is that something you're
it is a very big chunk. I would say that, gosh, anywhere between 30 and 50%, I would say at least, is worm compostable. And then, another 20% would be compostable through thermophilic backyard composting or, in a municipal heat system. Or anaerobically to collect the green energy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I feed all my stuff to the chickens, so I don't really have anything left for the worms for the most part. I would have to, look around to find stuff to set up worms separately. So, well, what kind of, what would be the best setup for someone that's just getting started? Like, do you have some words of advice of someone who wants to get started with worms?
I do. I do.
I figured you did.
So any container will do. It's creating the right environment for the worms. So if you were going to do this inside, and I'll talk a little bit about doing worm composting outside, but doing it inside, a Rubbermaid container or some kind of a tote is perfect. The worms require a carbon-nitrogen mix. So the carbon that is wonderful is shredded paper. And it's a wonderful way to get rid of some of our confidential documents. If you just shred it up, somebody could piece it back together, right? We've all seen CSI. Feed those shreds to the worms, and nobody's going to be taking your identity. So fun. So the paper is a great thing to use. You could also use leaves, straw, cardboard. Any combination of your paper products. And then, I would leave out magazine paper. It's a little bit too glossy, and really colorful flyers. I would probably leave those out as well. If you're going to use bond paper, I would suggest bond paper and newsprint, which is a little bit more absorbent. Or you could use, your egg cartons or drink trays, toilet paper rolls. All of those materials are wonderful compostable materials for the bedding.
All right, so you put in the bedding, and then where do you get the worms? How do you get started with the worms?
Right, so there are thousands of types of worms. Only about 4 that are optimum for vermicomposting. So we're looking for surface dwellers. So I'll just name the 4 that I know of. I mean, there's probably others that maybe even haven't been identified yet. Red wigglers, the optimum composting worm. European night crawlers. African night crawlers, and perionyx, which is a tropical worm. And they are all, you know, have their kind of specialty. The reds are the premium, and they're really quite small, 800 to 1,000 worms in a pound, which I think is nature's joke on fishermen. You know, because they're so small, people say, oh, yay, all worms is not great. But, you know, when you see how small they are, they're not really designed for fishing.
Yeah, not the best for fishing. So you get the paper or the browns, and then you've got your worms, and you've got a bin, some sort of tote. And then what about moisture level? Like, how much do you have to get it wet? Or, because I know that was a problem when I had worms for a while, just trying to keep that moisture level correct was tricky.
Right, so there's really 3 key elements for successful vermicomposting: temperature, moisture, and airflow. So temperature, 60 to 80 Fahrenheit, 16 to 28 Celsius. Airflow, so you want to have holes in your bin. The worms can crawl out of any hole, so it's really making sure you have the right environment so they don't want to leave the bin. And then moisture, about 75% humidity. Better too wet than too dry, but you don't want pools of water. That's, you know, then you may create anaerobic or smelly conditions if it gets too wet. And the worms breathe through their skin, so you do want to make sure, you know, it seems like this is designed for our times, because it will indicate if it smells bad, it's become anaerobic. You know, plants always require aerobic bacteria to grow. It's one of the small indicators that says, oh, something's happening. Worms breathe through their skin, so they require aerobic bacteria. So if it smells bad, it's, you know, you just need to fluff it up, add some oxygen in there.
So there's a friend on Twitter, on Garden Chat. She's been sharing her worms for quite a few years now. It's kind of funny. But she actually lives in Washington, D.C. area. She's in town, and she has a bin with her worm composting. I believe it's in the basement or the parking area. You should follow her on Twitter. Her name's Giovanna at JP Stick. It looks like chapstick. I'll tweet it to you.
Oh, we're following her.
Okay, so
yes.
Basically, you know, I've kind of learned from her that anybody can do this, right?
Anybody can do this. Oh my gosh, that's the exciting part. Is you know, I mean, I only started with the paper, but you need to add in some soil because worms don't have teeth. So there's, you know, little microorganisms in the soil that help to break down the food for the worms. Crushed eggshells and water, that's it. And then bury your food scraps in. But yes, anybody can do this. And I think that everybody should do this. You know, because, yes, the waste management, of course, part of it. The soil production, yes, big part, right? Because it's all about building the soil. You know, garden chatter.
Yeah.
You know that it's about building the soil, not feeding the plant, feeding the soil so that we can, you know, ward off any pathogens by having a healthy soil. Just like our healthy body, a great immune system will ward off, you know, we may encounter somebody with a cold, but we may not get it because our immune is strong enough. Yeah, beautiful.
Okay, so say, so I live out in the country. I can just go outside and lift up a rock and find a worm, or go out and look for night crawlers like we do when we go fishing. Sorry. They work pretty good for me. I've caught some pretty good sized bluegill with those night crawlers. But anyways, if you don't have access to worms, can you just like say go to, you know, where people would buy worms for fishing? Could you use something like that and just put it together?
Yeah, so you really do need the proper composting worm because you're looking for surface dwellers. The nightcrawler that comes out when it rains, they live below the frost line, so they go 4 to 6 feet, depending where you live, 4 to 6 feet below the surface. So they would really not be comfortable in a container, and they don't eat nitrogen. So they would eat the carbon or the leaves or the paper, whatever the bedding is. They would eat that, but they wouldn't eat the nitrogen, the banana peels, the potato peels, coffee grounds. They wouldn't eat all of that material. And they would be really stressed in a container, so they probably wouldn't be eating anything, just trying to get out of the bottom.
Okay.
So where do you think would be the best place to get worms? I mean, can you just order them online, or what works best?
There is a lot of suppliers online. In the States, there's certainly all the warmer states: California, Texas, Georgia, Florida. Large worm growers, in the States. More than Canada, I would say. Winter's our challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah. BC has more. I mean, in Canada, the BC has more of the worm growers.
Okay.
Very good. Well, we had a couple of comments. One, Giovanna Chapman said hello, because we mentioned her name. And then Lisa Houseplant she said that we have a worm bin at the Bella Isle Observatory in Detroit. So we can teach kids about decomposers and nutrients and fertilizer. So thanks.
Very cool.
For that.
Fantastic. Oh my gosh, teaching the children. When I started my worm business, I heard that a pound of worms and their descendants could transform a ton of organic waste in a year. And prior to that, I heard that the average Canadian, but I imagine the average American, same family, produces a ton of organic waste in a year. So I thought every family needs a pound of worms, and I'm just the one to put a pound of worms in every house. And then I discovered that people were afraid of worms, but not that the worms would harm them, just that, they're gross or they live outside. So it's really a big education piece, letting people know this is definitely something that can be done inside. The worms won't get out. They're not going to eat your children in the middle of the night. They won't, unless they're rotten.
Jeez. Wow.
No, that's not funny.
So Cathy,
I'm a worm farmer. I gotta have a humor.
Yeah.
So now you've got the worms all set up, and they're in the bin, and you've been feeding them, and they've been eating and eating. And then how do you start to harvest the castings? Can you tell us about that? Process? How's that go?
Yeah, so if you just have a basic, a tote or just a container, then it's about 3 to 5 months from setup to harvest, depending on many factors, particle size. The more you chop up your scraps, the faster it breaks down, the more the worms can eat. If you use the pulp from a juicer, the worms love that. It's like pre-chewed food for the worms.
Yeah.
So many factors involved in how long it takes. But about 3 to 5 months. Then when the material is converted, the easiest way to harvest your worm bin is to dump and sort. So you dump it out on a plastic sheet, put it in small round piles. The worms are photosensitive or afraid of the light. They go down into the piles, scoop off the top section, scoop around the sides, maybe an hour to do a bin that size, a tote. And then you set up your new bedding, add the worms back in. Use the black gold on your plants. We can talk about that in a moment. But the worms have a prolific reproduction cycle. So under ideal conditions, temperature, moisture, airflow, particle, all the ideal conditions, they're going to double in number in 3 to 5 months. So by harvest time, you'll have enough to separate your worms, give some away, start another bin. If they're not converting all your material, you want to make more compost. It's a wonderful thing. Or you can add them all back in. They'll regulate their population based on available space and available food. It's really magic.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
What about if you have, I have lots of space and I end up feeding most of my stuff to the chickens. Are there some things I could do to set up worms? Like if you have more space or property, you're not necessarily in an urban dweller.
Absolutely, yes. So that you can do, depending where you're located, you can do outdoor systems. Even, in Canada, we can do, or where Bren is, we can do outdoor insulated systems for the winter. I've done trials with grocery store waste where I've collected, from a grocery store, just a small little regular grocery store. I collected 3,300 pounds in 1 month of food waste. So imagine that summer how much compost I made in my backyard. And it really, again, it's magic. So that was not with the worms. I was just hoping to collect food for my worms, and I had no clue that we were so wasteful. 3,300 pounds of food that was still edible. It broke my heart, really. I mean, it was great that I got all that food and all that compost, but, you know, we're always talking about hungry people here and there, and there's no shortage of food. It's distribution, really, I believe. Yeah. So then I composted the material and then fed the compost to the worms so that I got a premium product. And also, if you're feeding large volumes, you want to be careful that it doesn't start to heat up. This is a different process. Backyard composting is thermophilic, or heating up under ideal conditions. The temperature, it will cook. The contents will get to a certain temperature and kill pathogens and weed seeds. Vermicomposting is actually mesophilic, or even temperature, so you really don't want it cooking, you know, heating up to 115 degrees Fahrenheit. That would kill the worms.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you do in the north. How do you prevent your soil from freezing? Like, where do you keep this container?
So I'm really advocating for indoor composting. So yeah, so indoor. Sure. Although it can be outside spring, summer, and fall in our climate, I really do advocate for indoor year-round if possible, because when you put it outside, you have a tendency to maybe attract the outdoor bugs that you don't want to bring in. You know, centipedes and sow bugs or woodlouse, whatever you want to call them, which once you bring them in, then they may be crawling around your house, and not everybody wants that. Nobody wants that.
Right. So earlier you labeled yourself as a worm farmer. I'm imagining, I was around a few chicken people this last week up in Arkansas. So, like, are they like your little babies? Like, do you know how many little worms you have?
Oh my gosh, I don't. Am I a bad person?
No, I was just curious.
I don't. At any given time, I mean, thousands and not millions of worms, I guess, if there's 1,000 in a pound. Yes. Yeah. So, no, I don't. They kind of all look the same to me.
Okay.
But I love them all.
Sure.
5 hearts. Did we talk about that? That they have a little bit about worm biology. So each worm has 5 hearts. 800 to 1,000 worms in a pound. 4,000 to 5,000 hearts in a pound of worms. It's a lot of love and a great Valentine's gift. Just know the receiver.
Yeah.
You have to let them know all those hearts are in there.
Sure.
So fun. I really do believe that worms are going to play an ever-increasing role. They can't not. It's such a simple solution that everybody can do. Once we get over our ick factor, once we realize they're not dirty, they are here to convert our materials, you know, into this this material that makes it the food is so readily available to the plant roots. It's just a beautiful thing.
Hey, on that topic of using the worm castings and that bounty, how best to apply that?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. If you're starting, you know, at this time of year, many people are just starting their gardens. So if you're putting existing little plants in or seedlings, dig your hole, line the hole with the castings, put your plant in, and the nutrients are available right away to be taken up by the plant. If you have an existing plant, gently work, you know, a little bit of castings around the stem. As you water, the nutrients are released. And if you're just doing a mix, I would say about 20% castings, 80% soil, mix it up, and you can start your seeds in there, put your plants in there, and it amends it beautifully.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to mention that Giovanni had a couple comments. She said a little earlier, my worm source stopped selling worms because it was not profitable to grow and ship. But lots of folks from a compost, I didn't have any trouble finding someone with extra worms. And then she also said, thanks for talking about temperature ranges, that was a problem for her, keeping it in the right temperature range.
Fantastic. Yeah, there's so many factors. You know, they are living creatures, and as you probably know, the microorganisms, the population increases and decreases with composting. Oh, super fast. It's such a, you know, a little temperature shift or a little bit of shift in pH, and boom, you have a new outbreak of something. So patience is what I would suggest to people that are just starting out or thinking they'd like to get into this. You know, some of the objections are smell. Will it smell? Because you're putting rotting food in. Is this going to smell? No. It's aerobic, so somehow magic takes place. I don't know what happens, but it's magic. And then fruit flies is another objection that people, am I going to have fruit flies? And what I say there is if you've had fruit flies in your house, but you haven't had a worm bin, you know the fruit flies don't come from the worm bin. They come from the food you're putting in. So certainly management is required. I do a lot of school workshops. Imagine if they had a big fruit fly explosion in the school. How long would that worm bin be in the class? Not very long. And the fruit flies and the worms coexist quite nicely. You know, the worms or the fruit flies don't bug the fruit fly or the worms, but they do bug us because we call them bugs. They're just doing their job. You know, so anything that we don't generally wash, bananas, orange, melon, you know, if we give it a quick rinse, that will wash off the fruit fly eggs. Then we can allow the scraps to start to decompose and then feeding it into the worm bin. Rather than adding your fresh scraps into your worm bin directly, again, a little bit of the management. As the food breaks down, the juice will get released. So if you add it directly fresh into your worm bin, then you may have a little bit of challenge managing the moisture and managing some of the issues.
So what about you've set up your worm bin? Oh, I'm getting that echo again. What would be the like the best? Sorry, the best setup for someone in a house. Like, what's the Cadillac, the cat's meow of worm bins that you could buy?
Well, it has to be the worm chalet. That's the one that it's one of the tower composters that we distribute, and there are several tower composters, and they're all beautiful, and they're a continuous flow. So what happens is you start on the bottom tray with any of the tower composters. Same ingredients as your basic kit. You would have your paper, soil, eggshells, water, your worms. Add your food in. When the tray fills up, there's holes in the bottom of each tray. So you add the next tray on. The worms will follow the food, so they migrate to the next level. And then by the time you get to the top tray, the bottom tray is done. With the chalet, you just turn the roof upside down, and the trays will stack right in the roof. There's a tap at the bottom of the tower composters, which helps to manage the moisture. So if it does get too wet, people will see the spout and say, oh, compost tea. With caution is what I say, because when you're on the first level, you may be getting more just the fruit, vegetable leachate, just the juice from rather than the compost tea. As you move up in the system and it's being filtered through the black gold or the nutrient-rich castings, then it's going to be more likely to be compost tea that you can use on your gardens.
Cool. Let's see, Brenda, do you have any last questions before we wrap things up?
Boy, I'm just taking it all in. And it totally, just another reason we really need healthy soil to keep the worms going and for fishing.
Yeah, I mean, 2015 is the International Year of Soils, right? So it really is about the soil, and that's what grows our delicious food. Yeah. If we don't add the nutrients back in, they're not there. Yeah, totally. as you know. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. So, Cathy, I see you're on Twitter. Where do you recommend people find you if they have more questions? Or I'm sure after I take this all in, I'll have more questions for you.
Yeah, please let me know. So, I'm at Squirm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. I have an amazing website since 2002, since starting my Great Green business. And Adam, you asked me about how many people. I mean, over 75,000 students have seen my presentation. I chose media as my marketing strategy, so over 250 articles, TV, radio. I have a documentary called Squirm. A squirm is the group of a collective noun for a group of worms, a squirm of worms, and that word was coined in 2002 by Mary Applehoff and Susan Antler. So it's just it really is. There's so many lessons in the worm. It's just such a wonderful, like for teachers, for anybody with small children, it's a wonderful way to engage the children in nature. So that if you don't know about something, you're not going to be protecting it later on because you won't know why you would bother caring about something. It's important.
Yeah, absolutely. I am a second grade teacher for years, and I did have a worm bin in my classroom for a while.
Yay. Fantastic. Didn't the kids love it?
Yeah, they did. They were very fascinated by it, for sure. It's a great teaching tool.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful.
Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening, Cathy. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you, Bren and Adam. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.